And that's recording.
Hey.
Now you're on camera.
All right.
And then make sure I get out the notes here so I can do this. And we just chat. It's just just a conversation and about you.
Awesome.
And I always say you can ask me questions. I usually try not to talk too much over you. You can get to know me a little more.
Do a cadence.
This is the wrong email. DinoDadComedy. Dan Berlyn bio. And I'll look through this. And let's see. Okay. All right. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. Now we are recording.
Hiya.
Hi, Dan. How are you doing today?
Noah, good to see you. DinoDad.
DinoDad. I got a new DinoDad hat.
Yeah?
Yeah, I found it.
What kind of hat is that?
I don't know.
It's like a...
it's an...
Is that in a fedora?
It's fedora-ish. I got it like years ago in San Francisco, and because I'm moving out of my house, I was finding all sorts of old things.
Look classy.
Yeah, well, thank you. So, we are doing our first ever podcast here at the Shanghai room, and I like this place because I don't know. There's a sign. There's like Anthony Bourdain and a picture of him when he visited here, and I feel like I want to continue something like that in the Seattle scene. But I want to know about you, Dan. I always ask this: who are you, Dan Berlyn?
All right, I'm a guy who I play a lot of chess. I played too much last night. I need this coffee right now. I just kind of hang out. I watch a lot of sports, and right now my main focus is doing stand-up. That's what I've been doing for about 6 or 7 months, seriously. And
were you doing it before then?
I tried a few times in late 2019, and I was so bad that like I knew people in the scene from then, and none of them remember me at all. Like it's like it didn't happen. So the pandemic hit, and then I just waited.
Yeah, and waited.
And I didn't even know when things were open or anything. I had no connection to the scene at all, really, except for this room at the Rendezvous. The mic is called Naked Brunch.
Yeah.
And I go there every week. It's my favorite open mic. And I saw that they were open, and that's when I kind of trickled back into the comedy scene, started doing stand-up. I was kind of afraid, actually, but people started to push me to do it, and now I'm a stand-up comic in Seattle.
You're kind of becoming a well-known one, I think. Like, I mean, in the sense that I mean, that's how I see it, is that you came to, we can get a little closer. We might end up cheek to cheek. Well, we might give one your special dad hug.
We've had a couple of good ones.
We've had some good hugs. Yeah. I mean, you allowed me to lean on your shoulder. You pulled me in. You're like, bring it in.
We can do a good one at the end.
Yeah, we can do that. That will be a pleasant way to end this interview. I should end them all with like leaning into hugs with people.
Well.
Maybe not everybody, but I'll ask first. I'll get consent. May I give you a hug, but not any kind of hug. A hug where we both feel our pain, and the pain gets emerged, or you don't have any pain. You're just like this guy.
Yeah. It was. I absorbed a little bit of it. I felt it. It was good.
Well, I appreciated that because I'm working through some things, and stand-up's been a way to, process it in a kind of lighter way.
I don't know how I ever processed anything before this. It's been like I have the same problems I always have. I just feel like I have a thing to look forward to. Like I had jobs. None of those really did it. But
well, you could pull material from jobs that didn't do it.
I suppose, yeah.
Well, how long you lived in Seattle? And I read your little bio, and then tell me about where you came from or where you came. Yeah.
So I have lived in Seattle for over 4 years now. I moved here in March 2018. Before that, I lived in Portland for a year.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I moved back home after I graduated from college.
Where's your home again?
Home is Evanston, Illinois. It's
Oh, that's right.
a first suburb north of Chicago.
Yeah.
You can walk to and from Chicago from Evanston.
Yes, I
And,
used to live in Chicago, so.
Yeah. So that's where I spent my formal years, as they say, and went to school in Missouri, where I also grew up a little bit.
Okay.
And came back home. I wasn't having a great time after college, so I saved up some money. I showed up in Portland with a suitcase and just figured it out from there. And then I got a job in Seattle about a year later, and that's kind of how I got up here. But I always had the idea. I don't know why, but like that I would start stand-up eventually.
Yeah.
And the years kept going by, and I was focused on other things.
Well, that's what happens. It kind of keeps, like, you keep thinking you're going to do it, you're going to do it, you're going to do it, and then something happens where you're like, now I'm going to do it. But have you ever done any, like, stand-up comedy in any of those places, Chicago or even Missouri?
No, not even. I had a friend who there was like one or two places in my college town to do open mics, and we went to one, and I watched my friend do it, and it just wasn't really a scene. Like, it was just a thing, like a novel thing to spend on a Tuesday night or something, like once a week.
In Missouri?
Yeah, so that was in Columbia, Missouri. I'm sure there was stand-up. It was just a world that I had no connection to, really.
Yeah, it's strange, and that's how I felt here, because speaking of, kind of recognizing that, because I thought about it too, about when am I going to do stand-up, and I didn't really, I told this thought a lot, but it was the water wheel where I was sitting there, like, after they kind of emerged from the pandemic, and there was a sign, literally signed, and I took it as a sign. It said stand-up comedy, and I was, open mic, I should do it. But I didn't think that this was the path towards, or for anybody, a path towards a potential career or whatever in comedy. I just thought it was just a place to kind of go in and tell dad jokes or whatever. And then people just started showing up once I took it over, and I just got overwhelmed with this idea that people do, because people like Eric Sheet, who's clearly a very professional comedian, and other folks, I was just like, what's going on here? But you grew up in like Evanston,
for the most part, yeah.
And when growing up there, did you ever do performance or anything like that?
No, I really wasn't like in that crowd at all. I actually, and I think this is stupid now, I thought that theater or improv or anything like that was just lame. It was like where the weird kids hung out. But I was completely wrong about that, I know now. I mean, there were a lot of weird kids, but like the point I'm trying to make is that they were learning things. They were fleshing out parts of themselves and making mistakes and learning how to socialize with each other.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I was just like in the locker room talking about porn with my teammates on whatever sports I was doing. Like, it was, and I regret that I was like closed-minded about that kind of thing, because I think it would have gotten me in where I needed to be a lot sooner. But I pretty much rejected, or I wrote it off, or I thought like I couldn't do it, so it's not even worth trying. And I'm still not like really a theater person at all. I've taken an improv 101 class here in Seattle, but that's about it as far as that goes.
Really, just one?
Yeah.
You're so good at thinking on your feet.
Yeah, I don't know where that originated really. I've always just been kind of witty.
Well, it's your brain,
Yeah.
your brain, and the thoughts you wanted to get out, I'm supposing. And even though you're just in the locker room talking about porn.
I mean, it was more than that.
That's all you talked about.
I'm reducing it a little bit.
It was all you talked about was
porn.
porn.
that was really it. Just for 4 years, it was all that was on anyone's mind.
Porn and jockstraps.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't wear a jockstrap for most things, but it's a bit cliche. But yeah, I just thought, like, if you weren't doing sports, like, well, there's no point. Like, I guess I'm a competitive person, and maybe has some correlation, but...
Well, you play chess.
Yeah.
What sports did you play?
Okay, I played baseball.
Oh.
I wasn't very good. I didn't take it seriously either. Like, you were supposed to go to these workouts all winter, and I didn't. And by the time tryouts came, like, I hadn't played baseball in like a year and a half, and I kind of did okay, but not that great. And I got cut before I even made the freshman team. So like, they offered me the manager role.
The water boy?
I was pretty much like I got in a couple of games, and that was fun, but. Yeah, I was pretty much the bench warmer.
Yeah.
And I would just, I would just talk shit to these guys when they were walking up to the plate, or like my own teammates, and just stuff like that. It just, these environments, heavily male dominated, where you just learn to take the piss.
It's so different because we'll move on from the baseball topic. 'Cause
right.
Talking about baseball is just about as boring as watching baseball.
All right.
But I like talking about baseball. But have you ever been to like a Huskies like women's softball game?
Never done any like UW sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've been to a few of the women's softball games, and then I watched one of the men's baseball games, and there was a very different energy there, which I'll just say briefly, is that the women, and I've noticed this more in women's sports, is that they really cheer each other on, and they work the crowd. It was,
okay.
they get people into it. And softball games are, at least in college level, I guess that's the most professional right now, is that they're only 6 innings, so it's easier to watch,
wrap it up.
and the field is shorter, so they actually hit more home runs.
Right.
And I think it takes a lot more work to pitch a softball that fast.
It's an amazing sport. I mean, a lot of like pros can't really hit it off. It's just a weird angle, and the way I don't even know mechanically
like
how it works.
Almost, that underhanded thing.
It's like you hit your elbow on your hip on the release. It's weird.
They just throw it.
They just
do that.
rip it.
All right. So, move on to the next thing. So, you have some goals here. We talked a little bit about it, and well, first, you want to. I know you want to establish a place in the Seattle scene. Do you think you have?
I'm not where I want to be in Seattle quite yet. I'm getting a little bit of traction, which is good. I'm starting. This is like my first round of bookings that I've had.
Wow.
Really. So, and there are a couple factors at play there. I think one of them is that I don't have a car yet. So,
I know.
So that kind of wraps into this, and I noticed people who had started later than me were getting shows, and I'm thinking like, all right, what are the factors at play here? One, these people are going to places like Auburn and Puyallup, or Des Moines, however you say it, and I'm like, okay, I've only done stand-up in Seattle, really. So that's one factor, is that they're able to go to these places where people need to fill out shows.
Yeah.
The other is they're just asking, I think.
Well, you asked me about the water wheel, and that's what I tell people. Just ask me. I mean, I book things out pretty far, and I've kind of taken myself back a little bit, because I don't. I mean, I like hosting, but I don't like lighting people and all that, and some of the hosts. Well, because I get so caught up with watching you folks perform that I would forget to light you. And at least the first time I did it, and Jack Slattery came, and a lot of people showed up, they noticed that some people were getting 5 minutes. Quinn Fitzgerald was like, when do I stop? But I was like, just keep going. And when Cliff Barnes came up, I just couldn't light him, because he was just. Have you seen him before?
Well, he's the elder statesman. I mean, you can't. I don't know if you would get off if you did light him, because he's just in his element the whole time. But yeah, I've seen him go. No, water wheel, I've noticed sometimes, everyone gets 5, but some people go 8, and it's like nobody really notices.
Yeah.
Like everybody's just kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
And I like that aspect of it. It's I think I'm usually around 5 to 6, and I think that's fine.
Yeah. That's fine. I don't mind. I don't like them, and everybody's going to do it. But that's why I'm bringing in different hosts. So next week there, Banji's going to host for the next 2 weeks.
Love Banji. So how did you get starting to work with Banji a little bit?
He just showed up to the mic,
Okay.
and he was really good. And
He is good.
so what I like to do, I really like to meet people and introduce myself and display my, not concern, but just like I want to help people get to where they want to be, however the best I can. I want to encourage people. I feel as if this local scene in Seattle is reminiscent of the whatever. I mean, I wasn't here during the '90s, but it feels like this the bars themselves where people start out. It reminds me of the grunge scene.
Okay.
And one thing that I want that's different, because if I reflect back of the grunge scene, you have all these artists, and that were kind of exploited to some extent, and I don't want that to happen here. I want the comedians to stay healthy and take care of themselves, but I want them to kind of continue to observe the world around. I enjoy stories. I enjoy smart observation. You talked a little bit about what's going on in the news, and you mentioned some edgier things when the whole Roe v. Wade came out. I loved it that you said so. I think you said I don't know what you said, but it was like let's talk about Roe v. Wade, and then you stopped, and that pause itself. So there's like a cadence to how you do it. So I guess how would you moving on from the grunge thing?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'll ask you one more. How do you feel about the Seattle scene? And then you can go on to
So I'll
describe
preface that by saying that I've never really observed any other scene. I've never been a part of it.
Yeah.
But just based on what I hear, what I observe is that Seattle is what some people kind of, I think, optimistically call it a fledgling scene.
Yeah.
And I really hope that it is. I hope that things are building up.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was like 5 years ago even, or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I have nothing to really to compare. It seems like a lot of people are taking initiative right now.
So when I was fortunate enough to try out some different things. I've done one open mic in Chicago, and I have some thoughts about us compared to them. And then I was in Denver for a little bit, and I really liked them because they very much, at least the open mics that I went to, very much somehow coordinated together. And I went to one brewery, and so many people were there, and I was meeting people, and then they indicate, and it started early, like at 5 p.m. On a Sunday, and then they said, okay, everybody, if you're finished up, if you're set, why don't you go over to this place? And then you kind of go with a cohort, and then they said, why don't you go to this place next? And it felt good to do that, and some of the people knew different people here in Seattle. And one thing I noticed is that Seattle and Denver are similar, but in Denver, people are actually happy. That's how I felt about it.
I think that just may be Denver and Seattle in general.
Yeah.
I've only visited Denver once, and it was a really, really neat area. I mean, I love the fact that it's like cool but sunny out at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
So I've heard that Denver's a better scene. I'm not going to sugarcoat.
Well,
that's just what I've heard. But
they have it's. I mean, Denver's bigger than Seattle, I think. And it was interesting because they weren't saying anything critical about Seattle. But then I went to LA, and it's very different there. I mean, you have to pay to perform at a lot of the mics. There are a few that you don't.
Heard that. No.
And it's also in Denver. The first open mic I did was a poetry one.
Right, you mentioned that.
And that I went. I asked if I could do it. They said that's fine. And then I signed up. And then they announced me. The guy said, "Okay, our next poet tonight is DinoDad." And I went up there. And this is before I created the character.
Okay.
I just went up there and told some of my jokes. But I said I'm not really a poet. I'm a stand-up comedian. And then I said, "Are you guys ready to laugh?" And there was kind of a mixed thing. And then I could tell there were a few drunk people, and they go, "Woo!" And then this guy in the audience who had just done his poetry, I believe he was an older guy. I told one of my jokes about comparing Catholicism to Judaism or contrasting them, and he just shouted out, "That's a good one!" And I always appreciate the positive hecklers. But in LA, there were a lot of comedians who had been to Seattle, like, a while ago, and a few of them are like, "I fucking hate the Seattle scene." Like, they're just.
So what was their reason?
They said that, like, it was just like people are cold, and so I tell a joke about, you go to Chicago, and the community there is just so warm. The comedy community is just very accepting. They work very well together. And even just kind of walking around, Chicago, you walk around, you talk to the homeless guy, and they're not even asking you for money or whatever. Right. And I say that, like, Chicago is so warm and welcoming, but it freezes in the winter, and Seattle freezes year round.
So I'll say this about my experience so far in Seattle, because that's the only experience I have, right? I have found that you kind of have to take your own initiative, and maybe that's different for some people, but me, I think it's kind of tied to how much I want to push myself, how much I want to reach out to other people and take initiative. What I've seen is that people who are progressing maybe faster, or maybe they had plateaued and jump-started themselves a little bit, they took over a room. They maybe take over multiple rooms, like Mitch is doing right now. He's doing a great thing.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate him. I don't know. I had no expectations either way, but I mean, his rooms, whenever he does them, they're taking off. Like, as far as like just out of nowhere, good open mics. In Seattle, like some of the best, actually.
And he is somebody who, I've talked to him, and he's gonna run here alternate with me a monthly showcase. But he's very warm and wants to treat people in a way that he thinks they deserve, is what I've noticed. But I want to ask you more questions about your comedy process, how you write, and how you kind of think about how you want to perform. Because the one thing I've noticed when I observe you is that, and I remember the first time I saw you at the Water Wheel and you went up.
When was that? It must have been like,
it was
December maybe, or November.
I don't know. I just remember you were kind of sitting like by yourself. And I thought your name was interesting, Dan Berlyn. It's a good.
A lot of people like the name.
It's memorable, and you're like, oh, you can remember it as a comedian. Like, if your name, if people would remember it. But you came up, you did your few jokes. They were funny, and then you asked, how much time do I have left? And they said 30 seconds, and you said, okay, I'll do crowd work, and you paused, and you're like, what's your name? And I thought that was so different, because you used that time, and I've used that too. I've like taken from that, and I say, okay, what can I do now? Tell me your process.
So I think that in particular is something that I picked up from like getting advice from other comics. I think it might have been Mark Normand who said that. He's like, Mark Normand is a New York comic. He's got some special.
Did you talk to him? Or?
No. So I watch a lot of comedians on their podcasts or interviews, and I think it was him, but it could have been any number of people.
He's really good.
Where these people, they share their advice because they really put in the work and they've done it a long time, and they want people to like. In my opinion, as a sidebar, I think comedy is one of those things where it's really hard. And a lot of people feel like you can't give away your secrets, you can't give away advice, but I think that's bunk, because a lot of people aren't going to take the advice anyway. They're not going to put in the work anyway. And if you're putting in the work, you're not going to shortchange yourself by helping others. So, but as far as, trying crowd work goes, that's not something that came natural to me, or it still doesn't really. It's just, I keep trying it out. And one of the things they said was, when you're in a place where maybe you don't know what you're doing, or you're having a set that's maybe going just okay, like, just do that extra rep. Like, you're in the gym, you get stronger from doing that one extra rep. And that's how I view it. It's like, just do a little bit more crowd work. Like, I kind of changed my mindset from like, I have to do well to I have to get something out of this set.
Yeah, exactly. Even you know, I actually embrace like bombing because it's something you learn from, and you can see it happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened to me last week at the water wheel, mostly because I gave a PSA about how people.
Yeah, I got there later.
Yeah, you got there later. In the beginning, you know, I just said something, and then I don't think Harrison realized that I was going to do that, and then he counted that towards my time.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, what? I didn't even get to tell jokes. So I looked out, and everybody is just staring at me like, you just killed the vibe. And I was like, I said I had to say what I needed to say. And I said, I'm bombing. I feel uncomfortable. And I want to bring you all into this discomfort with me. I'm going to stare at you. I felt like I was just going to stare at you guys for a minute. And there was a little laughter because people were like, I said, now you are feeling exactly how I feel on stage. And I'm going to try a few jokes. And I said, these jokes aren't going to work out very well. Because I just said, I'm so raw. And people said, and I had them say response, how raw are you?
You know what? Sometimes you just have to do really anything, try anything, and sometimes it has to be something that's cheesy.
Yeah.
I've kind of gotten to a place where I'm comfortable on stage, even when I'm bombing.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But I'm still a person. Like when I started out, and I didn't do this intentionally, but everything I said was self-deprecating.
Yeah.
Because that's how I felt that I could get people to like me or get people to laugh.
It's relatable.
It's relatable.
How often do we hate ourselves?
Most days.
Probably more often than we let people know, because they say fake it till you make it. I'm just like, no, I don't fake it. I hate myself till I make it.
Well, I don't fake it, but I kind of have a belief that I can eventually figure it out.
Yeah.
Like I think that's kind of what's carrying me through right now. But to your point, it's sometimes easy to forget what you're doing on stage. You're just going through your lines. It's at least how I feel. Like sometimes I'm like out of body, like just watching myself say my lines and do my gestures. And you got to remember, I think, that you're in a room full of people, full of humans who are there. Maybe they don't watch comedy often, or maybe they're just there with a date or some friends before they go out.
Or they don't even know that it's going to be comedy.
That
is
is
the water wheel. We have a few people that are like,
often the
there's
case.
a comedy night? And then you stick around. Like,
That happened at the College Inn on Thursday.
Yeah.
That's Mitch's new room, and Mary, who's his co-producer there, and Max. So that's and people are like, well, what is comedy? Like, I guess we'll stay and watch a little bit. So, I guess I just want people to know that I see them, and I'm aware of what's going on in the room. And sometimes I think that's all it is that people appreciate being seen and being spoken to, and sometimes it doesn't go well. Like, there's somebody who has kind of been voicing that they don't like it when comedians insult the crowd, or they say like "fuck you," like you're a shitty crowd, or like. And as a matter of principle, I actually agree with that. I think that if it's more your responsibility to make the crowd like you or laugh or whatever, pay attention to you.
Yeah.
But sometimes they're just not in it, and you gotta rile them up a little bit.
There's a way to do it. And when I was in LA, I went to the Comedy Store, and there's this guy. And he's well connected, and he does a late night show. His name's Don Barris, and he does also. I always want to do it because it pops up on Instagram. You just want to like randomly do a virtual open mic. It just pops up all the time, and you can just do it over your phone. But he doesn't really insult the crowd, but he like kind of like picks on people. He picked on these 3 women that were like a sorority, and then they were young, and he just kind of kept coming back to them. I can't even remember, but it was really funny. And then like other comedians like Pauly Shore were there, and then he had Pauly Shore come on stage, and he's like, what happened to your fucking career? And then he's like, you're not even a good comedian, or what? He said, I don't know. They were picking.
So he was at the store insulting Pauly Shore.
Yeah, and Pauly Shore's mom. I think Pauly Shore kind of owns the. I don't know. His mom.
Yeah, I kind of have an idea of how, but basically he was insulting the person who at least his son who runs a room, and I
Yeah.
guess runs a room.
Yeah.
But he was doing well.
Yeah, you know, it was banter, and then there was like a